everyone, this is Paul Cooper with Totes and Notes, and I believe it's, August 11th, Sunday, and I'm bringing you a case study, another case study, and this will be another asset that was recently acquired from that tape of 11 non-performing assets, and let's get started. Disclaimer again, the information here is not a solicitation, guarantee, financial, or legal advice. It's not exact. I've changed the information because it needs to remain private for my JV partners and other business partners. Just like if someone was ever to partner with me in the future, their information would be protected, and the exact numbers of any deal would be slightly different than what would be represented here. Make sure to perform thorough due diligence on any type of investment and any type of asset and any type of market, because all investing does have a pretty good degree of risk. It just depends on your knowledge, skill, and what the markets are doing. So this asset's in Memphis, and we acquired two assets in Memphis from this tape. This first one, we're labeling it B, because that's the first letter of the name of the street that it's on. So it's this asset here. This photo's from Google Street Views. It's a little bit older. I believe if you look close here, it may look like that window's boarded up, but it's not now, and it's occupied, and yard's a little cleaned up. But it's definitely a blue-collar neighborhood. Speaking of that, this is Memphis. So if none of you are familiar with Memphis, Memphis is a pretty unique city. I lived there for a few years. My wife and I did when I first got hired by the FAA, worked at Memphis Center. Memphis Center was a great facility. I liked the work there. The people there were great. But Memphis as a city kind of sucked to live in. It's got some major issues. There's a lot of racism on both sides there, from both white people and black people. It's really, really weird, especially if you've never really experienced or seen racism before. It's really, really odd, and I'd say it's even unique for the South. So that part was really, really weird, and we were glad to get out of there because of that. The city as a whole does have a fairly high crime rate. It doesn't have a very good education system, and it's really weird because it has a lot of really good things going for it. Geographically, it is a great location. It's right on, it's barely inside of Tennessee, on the border with Arkansas and North Mississippi, and it has good transportation. It has a good airport to get in and out of. It has good trains, and it has good waterways and good highways. So there are actually a ton of really good jobs there. Some of them deal with transportation. Some of them just have products that need to be transported. So it's odd that, well, I guess it's not odd. The issue is most people there don't qualify for those jobs, either due to criminal background, they dropped out of high school, drug use, and other things. So there's a bunch of really good entry-level jobs there that would usually be filled in most cities, but they have high turnover there. They're actually starting to get a really large international workforce there. They get people from the UK was one of the biggest ones when I left. A lot of people from the UK allocating there as professionals, making very good living. So it's just really odd. The other thing is Memphis doesn't have a lot of ownership there. It's a really, really large rental market. So the rental market is strong, but that comes with its own issues. There's a lot of urban blight there. A lot of cities are just basically crumbling. The infrastructure in some parts needs work. You're not going to see appreciation in Memphis, at least not in most of it, where we would invest. You're going to see appreciation maybe in the outskirts and the really nice suburbs, but that's about it. You're not going to see much in the way of appreciation there, but it's a pretty good rental market. Again, though, you have to really, really know the market well, almost a block-by-block, street-by-street basis, just because it can change very greatly with just in a couple hundred yards. So just got to keep an eye out for that. So hopefully I ranted enough about Memphis there. If you didn't know anything about Memphis, hopefully least have a basic grasp of what's going on there, so you'll be careful if you decide to invest there. And it should be a good city for most people to invest in. Again, you just need to be careful. Make sure that you get a drive-by of the property if you don't live there to look at it, and really get a good look at the neighborhood and the adjoining streets. If if you don't feel safe walking around there, then don't invest in that. Don't invest in that street. That's what I would say. Lots of really affordable housing, and this asset is very, very affordable. The UPB was $25,100. Is actually a little bit higher, but I rounded down. The fair market value, though, is only $25,000, so it's pretty close. It's basically maxed out. Again, with this pool, it's hard to say what exactly my bid would be. I kind of allocated $6,905 for this, and which came out to like a 26 to 29% of UPB, something like that. So pretty low. And again, since this is a low valued asset, you need your bid to be low on a CFD like that. The P&I is $300.26 a month, so annually that's roughly $3,603.12. The interest is 9.9%. I believe all the assets that we acquired, except for one in this list, are 9.9, and then there's like an oddball at 9.25 or 9.75. Fair market value, $25,000. Talked about that. There's a little bit in back taxes, like $810, so it's not much. It's not bad. And Tennessee's pretty good on taxes as far as not being too expensive on most stuff. But then they crank it up on anything tourist related and some other items since they don't have state income tax. Estimated expenses, again, $7,000. That's pretty typical of what we like to say for most assets. Again, I've got a little bit of economies of scale working for me since I buy more than just one asset, and so it should be less than that. But I like to have each asset calculated at $7,000 at least, just because that's a pretty good buffer. Asset strategies, this should look pretty similar. We're just doing different numbers. So it's going to be the performing ROI is roughly 26%, which is 12 times the P&I of $326 divided by $13,905, which was our original bid plus the $7,000. Note sale, here's the formula. I've talked about this a lot. Roughly 57%, so pretty dang good. ROI is pretty good. So if we could get this one to reperform, that'd be great. No headaches with that, and then start making decent money, and then 6 months to a year, flip it and make some decent money. Not too shabby. The REO's pretty low, and again that makes sense just because the fair market value for the property is low. It's just not a very expensive asset, and it won't be worth a lot. At least if you're trying to sell it. So REO would probably not be the strategy I would want to do here. Again, though, it just depends. You're not going to find many people that are going to have $25,000 just sitting around to buy a property, unless they're an investor, and you're not going to get a bank that's going to write a mortgage for that. So that brings us to our next strategy, the 10-10-10 rule, which again stands for 10 years at 10% with hopefully a 10% down payment. Again, we're not including a down payment in any of our calculations here. And again, the sales price doesn't properly reflect amortization. We are taking all the payments for the year and subtracting it directly from the P&I, which is not what would actually happen in a appropriate amortization table. But anyways, new terms. $35,000. You're like, well, Paul, you said usually you can only get about $5,000, maybe a little bit more on a property. Yes, I would say that normally, but this is a low-valued property, and look, here's the deal. Like I said, people aren't going to have $25,000 to buy this unless they're an investor, because it really, if you had that much money sitting around for a down payment, you'd probably just go get a better house, and you're not going to get anyone else that's going to write a note for it. So I'm going to say $35,000. In fact, I'd probably try to get even more, and I'll get to that here in a second. But we're going to say $35,000 at 120 months, 9.9% interest. That gives us a P&I of $460.59. That's pretty low. Memphis, again, is a high rental market. We could probably get more for it. We could probably get at least $600 a month, plus adding in their taxes and insurance, and we'd still be fairly in line with the rental rates. So we could possibly sell it for higher or adjust the interest rate. But again, those are the numbers we're using it. But I would probably try to sell it for more. And if you can keep the rates reasonable compared to the rental market, and so people can actually afford it, then you should be able to get more for it. At these numbers, the yield's roughly 39%. Not bad. I mean, that's honestly that's pretty good. It's just we've had some better examples where it's even higher in the high 50s and 60s, which is just insane. So that's not a bad little note to make there and hold on to it. Note sale after a year would be 119%. And then if you were to make this a 20-year note as opposed to a 10-year note, then that changes the note sale price to 118%. Oh no, it dropped a whole percentage point, which is virtually insignificant. And then the yield drops quite a bit, though. And we've talked about that. The length of the loan will drastically affect the yield, but if you're doing the note sale strategy, it really doesn't affect that much. And that would reduce the payments to $335.44, so less than $350 a month before taxes and insurance. That's a cheap old home and a note. I mean, I think the average car payment's like over $500 a month now in the U.S., so there should be no excuse for people to not pay that. So that would be a pretty safe setup. Again, I think we could get more for it, but that's just initial numbers. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I really appreciate everyone giving me the support and having the patience as we're revamping a lot of the business. And probably be bringing you another asset from this tape next week. And hopefully we'll resume our other video schedule shortly. It just kind of depends. I'm interviewing people this week for my assistant position. And so it's just going to depend on that and getting some other assets onboarded and potentially putting some bids out for some other assets. But anyways, have a good weekend and thanks for your time.